Haiti pays tribute this Thursday to President Jovenel Moise 1 year after his assassination. The British Prime Minister announced his resignation as leader of the Conservative Party. And the Israeli army killed with a guided missile Syrian citizens from the town of Hadar in the southwestern province of Quneitra. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Ana Marrero from the teleSUR headquarters in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news. Stay with us. Haiti paid tribute this Thursday to then President Jovenel Moise 1 year after his assassination. The Haitian government offered Moise's relatives a mausoleum to honor the former president. Authorities intend to hold a ceremony in the gardens of the Museum of the Haitian National Pantheon, while Moise followers organize current message floral offerings and cultural activities all over the country. 1 year after the death of President Moise, citizens agreed on points out the situation of countries is deteriorating rapidly due to the lack of democratic institutions. Meanwhile, insecurity of violence in the country is critical due to gang violence. Authorities registered more than 500 kidnappings in 2022 and over 200 deaths as a result of gang warfare in the north of Port-au-Prince. Meanwhile, citizens of Haiti decide to mobilize to demand justice for President Jovenel Moise on the occasion of the first anniversary of his assassination. This Thursday, the Ecuadorian government and social and indigenous movement that participate in the national strike will set up the technical roundtable for dialogue in Quito. The meeting will take place at the headquarters of the Ecuadorian Episcopal Conference and will determine the roadmap for dialogue during 90 days established in the agreement signed by both parties. This first meeting takes place after the 18 days of national strike in the South American country called by the indigenous movement and supported by diverse sectors of society. From this date on, both teams with the mediation of the Church and European Union will sit at the table waiting for resolutions that will avoid another social outburst like the one that occurred between June the 13th and June the 3rd. Panama's teacher union maintained a 72-hour labor strike in protest against high fuel prices and to demand better working conditions. Teachers Association of Panama announced that they will begin a 72-hour strike extendable while their representative went out to protest in the capital city to urge the government to respond to the demands regarding the high cost of living. Teachers also call on parents and students to join the strike and not to be manipulated by the executive arguments that condemns the teachers' protesters for supposedly affecting the education of the students. In Mexico, the Attorney General's office opened an investigation against former President Enrique Peña Nieto for several millionaire transactions. Pablo Gomez, head of the Financial Intelligence Unit, emphasized that the folder with all the details was delivered to Attorney General's office. Gomez points out that the Public Prosecutor's Office launched the investigations after discovering a series of millionaire banking operations by the former president. President Manuel López Obrador stated that all information related to politically exposed persons must be analyzed, informed and handed over to Public Prosecutor's Office.
A trace was detected in which a former president of the Republic obtained economic benefit. It was observed that the former president received, by means of international transfer, 26,001,429 pesos, 74 cents in local currency.
In Brazil, former President Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva will take part on the event Siempre Juntos por Rio, where he intends to make alliance in one of the country's major electoral strongholds. The event is to be held in the city of Rio de Janeiro, where Lula will attend, accompanied by former Governor Geraldo Alckmin, who is a pre-candidate for vice presidency of the Workers' Party. Also attended by will be local leaders of political organizations that are members of the movement supported by the Going Together with Brazil, Brazilian Socialist Communists of Brazil, and Socialism and Freedom. So far, the former Brazilian president leads all opinion polls and is on his way to the next elections in the country. We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back. Specialized financial journal points out a 38% increase in the likelihood that the United States will fall into recession in the next 12 months. According to Bloomberg, U.S. consumer confidence will reach a historic low and interest rate will rise. In fact, U.S. consumers' confidence has so far fallen to a 16-month low in June, and the U.S. Federal Reserve raised its benchmark interest rate by 75 basis points, the largest increase since 1994. According to the Bloomberg economic model, the losses of purchasing power and an increase in the prices of raw material, which maintains affect the country's industries, are two of the problems that have the strongest impacts on the U.S. economy. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson announced on Thursday his resignation as leader of the Conservative Party amidst the ethical crisis faced by this party. Johnson said he will remain as head of government until his successor is named. The Prime Minister had rejected the idea of submitting his resignation on Wednesday in controlled session of the House of Commons, in which both opposition parties and some of Representative MPs demands him to resign. Boris Johnson became the British head of government with the most ministerial resignations in 48 hours after the departure of more than 50 government officials, including several ministers as well as MPs from his party and other ranking officials. So far, Conservative MPs said Johnson should leave office to avoid a government shutdown.
It is clearly now the will of the Parliamentary Conservative Party that there should be a new leader of that party and therefore a new Prime Minister. And I've agreed with Sir Graham Brady, the chairman of our backbench MPs, that the process of choosing that new leader should begin now. And the timetable will be announced next week. And I've today appointed a cabinet to serve, as I will, until a new leader is in place. And
hundreds of demonstrators gathered on Wednesday afternoon in front of the British Prime Minister's residence demanding his resignation. As the political crisis worsened in the government's rank, citizens gathered in front of 10 Downing Street, Boris Johnson's residence, to press for his resignation. At the same time, according to a poll published by the YouGov, 69% of those polls through that Johnson should step down as Prime Minister, while only 19% want him to stay in power. Meanwhile, 54% of those polls have voted for Johnson in 2019 also approved his resignation.
Resigned because he's lost the confidence of the House of Commons. He's lost the confidence of his own party. When you consider the number of resignations that we've seen today, when you consider that the House of Commons tomorrow is going to be dysfunctional because the Conservatives are not even going to be able to operate bill committees because they haven't got the ministers to do it. You know, for him it's over. And when you've got cabinet ministers that are going in there tonight telling him to resign, they now...
In Poland, farmers take to the streets this Thursday in front of the Palace of Culture and Science to protest against the government for destabilizing food production. Farmers in Warsaw were also demonstrating against rising interest rates, soaring prices of agricultural inputs, and the resulting instability in agricultural production. In this sense, protesting farmers are unhappy with the lifting of tariff of Ukrainian agricultural products. This Wednesday, the UN authorities warned about increase of hunger at the world level after the publication of a report, State of Security and Nutrition in the World. In this sense, the Assistant Secretary General of the organization, Amina Mohammed, affirmed that the world is moving away from the goal of eradicating hunger by 2030.
For the SDG 2030 deadline, the call is clear. Food systems must be transformed to build resilience against these drivers. We cannot continue with the business as usual. We must make the transition from humanitarian relief to development, addressing the root causes. By investing in sustainable development, driven by transformed and reconceptualized food systems, we can address the root cause of hunger, food security, and malnutrition.
In turn, UN officials state that the last 2 years for security and nutrition of billions of people were further undermined by the COVID-19 pandemic. In 2022, the global consequences of the conflict in Ukraine are added.
Fourth, it's time to learn the lessons of this crisis and invest in resilience programs to help the poorest communities protect themselves against hunger, against shocks. If we had successfully threaded this needle in the past, the war in Ukraine wouldn't be having such a disastrous global impact today.
We have more news coming up after this final short break, so don't go away. Welcome back. This Thursday, the Israeli army killed with a gun missile Syrian citizens from the town of Hadar in the southwest province of Quneitra. A Tel Aviv drone fired a missile at a 46-year-old Farid Fuad Mustafa while he was near his home, resulting in his immediate death. The victim was a member of the leadership of the ruling Ba'ath Party in the said locality and farmer fighter from supporters the army in its fight against Israeli-backed organization in the area between the year 2012 and 2018. The town of Hadar has witnesses at least 16 Israeli attacks against the people known for their support for resistance to the Israeli occupied forces in the Syrian Gulf and with a long history of fighting terrorism in the area. U.S. military forces again plundered the Syrian natural resources. The U.S. forces on Thursday loaded at least 45 tankers truck loaded with oil from the Arab nation from the northeastern province of Hasakeh, considering that riches in the country with natural and agricultural resources. Also, members of the local press continue to publish images of caravans of truckers from the Syrian Democratic Forces, SDF, a militia allied with Washington's leaving the oil filler ban for Iran in a flagrant violation of all international norms and laws. Sudan main civil bloc rejected on Thursday a proposal by the country's de facto president to usher in a civilian government. Hundreds of protesters called on the move a hoax. Condemnation was erected at the decision of the army chief Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, who promised on Monday to open up the administration to allow civilian groups to form part of the new transitional government. In response to what they saw as a first Sudanese protester, they held a seat in the center of the capital, Khartoum, till Wednesday night when it is defenses of repression by security forces. The protester also spread to other cities, copying the aforementioned city in part. The G20 heads of diplomacy began arriving in Bali, Indonesia, which has a ministerial meeting between Thursday and Friday, where they will address an agenda focused on global security and economic recovery. For the day, diplomats will discuss the conflict in Ukraine, food and energy security, and global inflation, which threatens to trigger a worldwide recession. One of the key points of the meeting will also be marked by the presence of Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, who will speak out against Western accusations toward Russia. Washington anticipated that its Secretary Antony Blinken will hold bilateral meeting among them with the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi and roll out a meeting with Lavrov. On the sidelines of the G20 Foreign Minister Summit, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi met in Indonesia. Lavrov said a bilateral meeting, Russia and China will continue to increase practical interactions. The Russian Foreign Minister added Russian-Chinese relations have an enormous potential. Lavrov stated they will continue to substantive development of new forms of cooperation, independent of negative external factors for the benefit of both countries and their people. The foreign minister said a growing number of states were offering their support to Russia and China. Hundreds of thousands of worshippers started mass pilgrimages to Mecca, the largest since the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic in 2020. After 2 years of drastic limitations, 1 million Muslims fully vaccinated, including 850,000 from abroad, took part in the Yada or the pilgrimage. The journey takes place around Islamabad site, located in the west of Saudi Arabia, in great most of Mecca. Pilgrims must complete it of their roundabout around the Kaaba, large cubic structure wrapped in a black cloth and burned in with gold, toward which Muslims from all over the world turn to pay.
It's an honor to welcome the pilgrims, a true honor. May they return safely to their countries. They are welcome here anytime. It's their second country. As I saw the Kaaba, I felt like I was in heaven. It's amazing, so beautiful. May God accept my Hajj and that of all pilgrims.
At least 22 migrants, including 3 children, all from Mali, died in a shipwreck off the coast of Libya. After 9 days at sea in Jordan, 61 survivors, mostly from Mali, were rescued by leaving Coast Guard and brought to shore. Since the beginning of the year, over 60,340 migrants were intercepted and returned to Libya. At least 129 people died attending the cruise, and 459 are missing and presumed dead. The chaos that followed the fall of Masr Gaddafi's government in 2011 was made Libya's preference return road for tens of thousands of migrants from sub-Saharan Africa, Arab countries, and South Asia seek to reach Europe via the Italian coast of some 300 kilometers from the Libyan coast. Several thousands of them are stranded in Libya, often in deplorable conditions. teleSUR English continues to grow. The signal now reaches Europe. You can order it from your cable dealer or tune it yourself. These parameters that you see on the screen are replaced since July the 1st, and quite soon for the changes will be implemented for the signal in the Middle East and Africa. Now more than ever, the world connects to us, and our stories are being heard all around the globe. This news multi-platform will continue providing trustful content to oppose the hegemonic media's narrative and our faithfulness to our audience. With that story, we have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on our socials. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and on Instagram as well. For teleSUR English and from the South, I'm Ana Marrero, and thank you for watching.